It's Wednesday. Let's chat. Hi, I'm Kanan Chandran, the publisher of stormasia.com, and this is our regular series of web chats, the Wednesday web chat. We talk about all kinds of things during these sessions, and today we are tapping onto something which a lot of people are very familiar with, very much involved with as well, passively or actively. It's about what we consume. What are we watching? What's on TV? What's on our mobile phones? What is it that's keeping us glued to our sets? Now, I think when you look at the whole era of television, it used to be fixed programming. You had to be there at that time to watch something, and if you missed it, it's gone, right? Now, with mobile phones, with smart devices, smart TVs, and on-stream, streaming platforms are there. You can take it at your convenience. Now, we've seen so many different and new methods of watching programs coming up, new applications, new platforms like like your Netflix, you've got HBO, you've got Apple TV, so many different things. So what's happening to our usual television channels? How are they faring? We did a quick look at some of the trends that are shaping our habits, and not surprisingly, magazines have dropped by 50%. This is a period roughly 2011 to 2021. So magazine reading has dropped by 50%. Might be more, I'm sure, by now. Radio is down 19% as well. Now, TV viewing is down 24%. Desktop use has gone up 25%. And mobile use, clearly way ahead, has grown 460%. So from 45 minutes of using the device in 2011, it's now more than 4 hours. So clearly, we are looking at things very differently and in a very different way. Now, chatting with me today, we have a media veteran, Kenneth, who's the chairman of the Singapore Film Society and who was the chief operating officer for TV at MediaCorp. He was the managing director of Golden Village Multiplex and Golden Village Pictures, and he was the Singapore Film Commissioner at the Media Development Authority. So he's covered a fair few things, and it's great to have him here in this session because he brings a lot of perspective to our chat. Welcome, Kenneth, to today's discussion. We've also got Jeremiah Choy. He's the founder of Orangedot Productions. He's a trained lawyer who switched careers and went full-time into directing, acting, writing, and choreography to great success. And he's busy now again, so he says he's packed till May next year with work to do. So fantastic to hear that. Welcome to Jeremiah. And our final panelist is somebody who's not in the media space so much, but is a young mother and an important element in this discussion because we want to get a younger person's perspective. She's a creator of Dance Embassy and Tinted Whatever. Dance Embassy provides team bonding, dance and fitness services, and Tinted Whatever is a growth platform for business women. So Lavania Rosie, thank you for joining us today and completing this panel. And fantastic to have all of you here. I just would like to start with, how do you consume your media these days, very quickly? And if you could just tell us a bit about yourself before you get into that. Let's start with you, Kenneth.
Hi, everyone, and thank you for inviting me. I started watching media content, I think, when I was a very young child, and it sort of morphed into my obsessive hobby and then into my career. So I've spent all of my adult life in the media industry, and I'm truly thankful that I'm able to do what I love. In one way, my habits have not really changed. I'm watching more than ever before. Central to my consumption habits is going to the cinema. I'm a big fan of that immersive experience. I'm a broadcast television junkie. I mean, I've been addicted to television for as long as I can remember. If some of the people who are watching, and maybe some of us here on the panel, remember a series called The $6 Million Man, which is
Lee
about
Majors, yeah.
rebuilt with experimental cybernetic parts. I was so obsessed with that TV show that I even flew all the way on my own expense to Baltimore, where Lee Majors was appearing at a fans convention just to meet him. So I'm a content person. Uh, I think these days, the good thing about this explosion of media platforms, this proliferation of media platforms, is that there are so many ways to access just about anything people want. And that includes not just the new stuff, but also content that was made a long time ago, which otherwise might not be available so easily to today's audiences at any point in time. So it's 2022, and you want to watch something that was made a long time ago, decades ago. It used to be that you had to travel, you had to order it on recorded media, but now you can see it with some resourcefulness. You can get it legitimately most times. So I think for me, the net result is I'm definitely watching more. I'm definitely watching a wider variety. But in my case, I haven't forsaken the methods of consumption that I grew up with. I'm still watching cinema, in the cinema, I'm still watching television, and I'm watching streaming and mobile and all that as well.
Ah, okay. So you've managed to straddle both worlds and right, try to get the best of everything. And these days you wouldn't have to go all the way to Baltimore to watch Lee Majors. You could just join in a virtual session, I guess. There's one advantage. You can save a pretty penny on that sort of thing. Okay, great. Jeremiah, how about yourself?
My journey is a bit different. I grew up with Rediffusion. I'm not sure a lot of people would now know what Rediffusion is because my mom works from home. She's a seamstress. And we would have a Rediffusion set next to her, and she'd be listening to the Silver Channel. Okay, those of you who don't know Rediffusion, there are two channels. There's the Golden Channel and the Silver Channel. Golden Channel is for the English, and Silver Channel is for Chinese, which includes dialects and everything else as well. Right. So my first contact with media when I was very young was literally music and sounds from the Rediffusion. For television, we have to traipse over to my neighbor's house because not everyone has a television at home at that time. So my neighbor happened to have a television, and we would go over for certain television programs. If not, we would have to go to the community centers to watch shows. So I grew up having this sort of media very communal to me. You're always watching shows with friends or neighbors or with the people downstairs. Of course, as I grew up, then radio became a good friend of mine. The BBC channel was where I started learning how to speak, being in a neighborhood school, and then subsequently having to teach myself proper articulation without being a Queen's English or whatever it is. So I thought it was a good source. And that's, of course, when I grew into my teenage years, it would be my source of American Top 40s. And that was that. Of course, TV and radio became constant companions as I grew up because that was the main source of program. But we got very busy at that time, so we are always missing certain shows that we want, or I remember always rushing home to catch a certain episode because those days, right, each episode is once a week, like every Monday at 7 o'clock. And if you miss it, you miss it, and then you can't discuss the episodes with your friends, right? Then of course with cable TV that came along, that's what Kenneth say. You are able to then record it, or you can revisit the programs that you have missed. I'm also very much a live theatre person. I would love to watch dance, theatre, music live. I would defer to what Kenneth said. It's never the same as flying to see Lee Majors and watching him virtual. I think it's a very, very different experience altogether. I would prefer to fly over and watch him live if I can, afford the time and the money for that. Now, I think there's way too many platforms, social platforms, platforms with a lot of applications and all that. I think the fact that you said we are consuming more than 4 hours, I think that would have been the average, because if you were to go to an MRT or a bus everybody has their face glued to their phone, their smartphone. And sometimes I just think I am quite tempted to do that as well. But I sometimes force myself to put down my phone just to watch the scenery as the bus goes by. I love sitting on the double deck, on the higher deck to watch. Then I realized that the landscape of Singapore has changed over the years. Even though you pass through a certain route every day, or you pass through a route once in 2 months or once a year, suddenly you realize that the landscape has changed, and that really intrigues me all the time. So that's my consumption. Yeah, I still very much get glued to Facebook and social media and things like that, but I try and restrict myself because I think I will lose out if I watch too much things online or on content and I don't see the things next to me, which is quite precious.
Okay. Um, yeah, well, it's all a matter of convenience, I guess. If you want to if you can afford to and you want to be there to watch league majors, yeah, sure, why not? Okay, Lavania, I kept you to the last so that you could at least hear some of these stories about how people, our generation watched things and consumed stuff. So, tell us a bit about yourself and how you are watching your media.
All right. Hi, everybody. So, as Kenneth said, that I'm the youngest in the group, so I hope I can contribute some solid information here. So, when I was growing up, actually, my parents were heavy consumers of media. In the morning, the radio was switched on, and in the evening, the TV was always on. And we were huge fans of Phua Chu Kang. We never miss an episode. And we'll go to the that VCR store to rent VCRs, and movie nights were a thing in my home. And fast forward to now, I actually kind of hate it because we never spoke. When we had like an argument in the house, the TV kind of like fizzles it out. So we don't really like communicate with each other. Everything was like swept under the rug because there was a distraction there, and we don't sit down and talk it out. So fast forward to today with my two kids, we make sure that there is no TV, no handphones when we are dining. Even when we go out for restaurants, we make sure that there is no devices. And even though they're young, one is like 3.5 and the other one is just 3 months, but we want to show them that social skill is really important. And yeah, so I'm on the opposite side of Kenneth. I don't really like the media as much as we need it, but I feel like the human connection is lost because of that, and I put a lot of restrictions in my life when it comes to media consumption.
Okay, is that going to be something for now as your children are growing up, and that might loosen up because you don't want to deny them access to a lot of things either, because then they will feel left out and they might be disadvantaged, right?
Yeah, but they have enough exposure outside. They go to their friend's house for play dates. They are watching TV. In school, they are watching a bit of like media programs on TV. So they have enough exposure. But when it comes to the house, just the family time is precious for us, and we don't want to lose that by watching TV.
Okay. Yeah, so one of the things that you raised, and I think a lot of people do comment on it, is the fact that today's consumption is very personal. It's your screen, it's your device, you're watching your own thing. You don't necessarily you have to watch anything because somebody else is watching it. Does that make us... okay, let me go back also to the fact, Kenneth and Jeremiah, in your time, you would watch TV in the early years at your neighbor's place. And that's something which maybe you still get when you're watching important football matches, for instance. You bring groups of people together. But other than that, do we not have that sense of community? Are we losing that as a result of today's media? What are your thoughts on that, Kenneth?
Yes, we are, but sometimes no, we are not. Right? Yes, we are, because in a lot of today's consumption situations, it's very me, my screen, my device, my consumption, right? And the scenes that have been described on public transport, someone's got the headphones and they're in a totally private world, right? So there is no community interaction. And I can understand why Lavania wants to make sure, that her kids don't get so isolated that they miss out on that one. It's totally understandable. But no, in the sense that I think even in this contemporary environment, it is still possible to have interaction, but it needs to be planned for. So, for example, during the peak of the pandemic, 2020, the lockdown, the circuit breaker, and the months that ensued. For example, in what I do, film festivals and all that, how were we going to do that when cinemas were closed for some months and even after they reopened, limited capacities? So we experimented with, and this is something that my 20-something-year-old colleagues taught me, online watch parties, where it would be something that people can watch actually on time, on demand, anywhere, but you make an arrangement with everyone at 8 p.m. or whatever the time was to watch something, say a movie or a piece of content, and then after that, discuss it. And none of the people met. We did some of these watch parties. There were 200, 300 people. The difference between that and something like what we're doing right now, I think, is the people who are having the discussion are all watching something that has been pre-made. And then they're having a discussion among themselves, not interacting with the people in the content that's being watched. So that was quite interesting because, I was skeptical at first. I thought, how can you do this? We're not even face to face. We don't laugh together, scream together. But one thing I realized, it drew out the reticent. It drew out the shy, quiet ones. Some of the people participated by typing in the chat box. And that was still participation. So I think sometimes you do have the communal element. But I agree, all things being equal, with this proliferation of my device, my screen, it does tend to get more socially isolated. And of course, for kids and young people who are born into this environment, I witnessed a year and a half ago, a toddler, that stage of life where the child has just learned to walk and is waddling and wobbling a bit. And you've got the parents sort of not far behind, waiting to catch the child in case the child falls. This is in the cinema foyer. And you have those poster boxes, the light boxes with the posters in them. The little boy went up to one of the poster boxes and then went and touched the box and started doing this. And nothing happened. And then the kid started bawling. And then the mother ran to console him. He expected that poster box was a touchscreen and could be, and that was quite heartwarming, tragic comic. It was just one of those types of life things to see because it's very real. That child has been born into an environment where anything that resembles a screen is meant to be swiped, pinched, and the child was bawling, but the mother consoled him in 10 seconds. So I think, yes, it is, but sometimes no, it isn't in terms of the loss of the community element.
Jeremiah, for you, a lot of your stuff takes place live on a stage. How do you feel about this? Do you see a lot of younger people still attending your stuff, or is it older audience that shows up for your shows?
Okay, before I answer that, I have a confession to make. I was sharing an old photograph with a friend, and I did exactly what Kenneth said of the young boy. I was trying to extend it. So I think sometimes it's just motor reflex. Anyway.
How easily we get wired. Huh?
Yeah. On a photo, my friends just had a great time. I didn't bawl, but my friends were bawling because of that. Back to your question. Yeah, I'm more a live audience person in the sense that I just recently attended LKY the musical, and after 2 years of not having seen a big 3 hours musical, I sat there and I was really overwhelmed. Of course, it was a grand, epic musical, very well made, but I missed that communal feeling of the entire audience laughing and crying. They literally cried, together with you. And even if you didn't feel that, you will be moved to feel that as well. That communal feeling is incredible, However, I must also say that media or online media or whatever we call that is really a two-edged sword. It can both give you information, education, and entertainment and everything else. But if with any other things, if you overindulge in it, it will make you into something else, a monster, because you become an addict to it in that sense. uh, uh, for example, once you're into this social media thingy, that you only want to text, want to WhatsApp, want to talk to people online because you don't want to talk to people live, then you will tend to be socially inept. You're not able to talk to a person and look at the person in the eyes. Like, I just conducted a workshop for Child Aid, which is an event that I'm doing at the end of the year, raising funds for the School Pocket Money Fund and the Business Times Budding Artist Fund. And I had a 3 days workshop, right? So 3 little girls, 5 years old, 6 years old, they wanted to print a lyrics. So we asked a gentleman in the office to print it, and the guy gave it to the girls, and they just say thank you without even looking at the gentleman. Why? I think they come from very good family. Not it's not for lack of family or parental guardians or whatever it is. I think it's because they're so used to devices which are inanimate, right? So they are not able to interact with a human person. And they said thank you, but they didn't see the person or didn't have the eye to see the person when they say thank you. Little things like that, I feel that it's starting to erode. If we don't take this opportunity to share with them, to teach them, I think the opportunity is lost as it is. As simple as they think they said thank you, but was the thank you meant in that sense? Because online, I type thank you. On WhatsApp, I type thank you. They thought that it's already delivered as it is.
Yeah.
So I feel that it's a two-edged sword, and sometimes the social inept is not because of family, non-teaching, or whatever it is. I think it's really life experience that they are not used to. Another example is when I have an intern, 20-something years old, 30-something years old, and I was asking some questions to the intern, and I said, let's chat. And she texts back to me, aren't we chatting? So to me, chatting is on the line, calling and chatting, because texting, you may have lost a lot of meanings to it. Or another time I wanted to chat with another intern. I said, shall we chat? And she said, shall I set a Zoom up? I said, well, a phone call will do. We don't need to Zoom, So I think sometimes the lingo or the headspace is very, very different in terms of the era that we're in. And maybe, again, we don't need to Zoom for 5 minutes. My friend just complained to me that she was in a very young office and she just wanted to clarify somebody with her colleague something. And the colleague said, oh, let me set up a Zoom meeting. She's just sitting next to her. Let me set up a Zoom meeting at 3 o'clock. It's like, but why? I'm just speaking to you. That's because we're so used to the Zoom office culture for the past 2 years that they forgot that they can just turn to the colleague and ask the question. An immediate answer will do. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's both it's a double-edged sword in that sense.
Yeah, but I think the thing though, with all of this behavior, and while you can maybe help train or teach some of the younger people to have eye contact and stuff, a lot of others won't. They will still grow up expecting a thank you or an emoticon to do the work for them. How will this affect your viewership of your live performances, though? Do you think that is going to be a longer term impact as a result of this changing behavior?
Definitely. Can you imagine in the past where we frown upon people talking on the phone before or during a live performance? people are video calling in a live performance to let her friend or his friend see what is happening on stage. And they think this is okay. Yeah, I mean, of course, sometimes in some of our performances, we will allow that to happen. Or the fact that people are happy to view a performance through a camera rather than in real life. These are beginning to happen. And as you say, we can only, these are teachable moments, we can only reach them one at a time. But, I don't think it's a battle lost yet. I think we can still help our audience understand and also appreciate live performances as it is.
Lavania, despite disliking media, I'm sure you would still bring your kids as they're older in to watch cinemas and watch performances. Yourself being in the space as well as a performer, right? Do you think that the people that you interact with who have children, do you see a change in behavior in children in that regard? Do you see them behaving in a certain way that's maybe a bit different to you?
Yeah, I mean, not say my kid is also an angel. I will cry for the iPad also. So that's also like a battle that I have at home. But coming to Jeremiah's point about that kid not giving eye contact while saying thank you. So my husband is French, and when we say thank you, we give that cheek to cheek kiss. So every time when someone gives my son a gift, we say, "Oh, go and say merci," and "bisou." Bisou means kiss. And the one who's gifting my son, most of the time they are Singaporeans. They are taken aback, like, "Oh, he's coming to say thank you. Oh, he's coming to come and kiss my cheek." And I am like, yeah, that's the norm. Like, what do you expect the kid to do? Just say thank you and look down. But also when I was growing up, we were so shy individuals. I don't know about you all, but when someone gives me something, I'll be like, okay, thank you. I don't really give eye contact to the person, right? And our parents also don't tell us to like give eye contact when saying thank you. Just saying thank you and that's sufficient. So I mean, yeah,
It's a
that's what
children should be seen and not heard thing, right? As we
exactly.
were growing up. I'm sure a lot of that has to change because we are severely disadvantaged by that because a lot of the Western children are doing a lot better in terms of communicating and and getting further ahead in some jobs where you have to speak well, communicate
It's
well,
true.
and interact well, right?
It's true because when my son, when he plays with the expat kids, I can tell the difference that their social skills are admirable. They play with each other, they share their toys, they're speaking like adults even. I mean, he's just 3 years old. And when he's playing with the Asian kids, he's like the leader of the pack. He's telling them what to do, and the Asian kids are like following him around and they don't communicate much. So, yeah, I hope that narrative will change.
Okay. Just looking at the content that we have as well, while we switch to the streaming platforms because there's so much variety there, how are our own TV channels faring? Is the content that we get via the television channels good enough? Are they up to speed? What are your thoughts on that?
I
Kenneth, you
think
having been in that space.
well, I think a number of interesting things are happening. One, everybody or many people, I shouldn't say everybody, many people in that space are learning firsthand that there's still some stickiness, I think that's the word, that consumers have with local TV. It's not about Singapore, this is in many parts of the world, because the content is local. Some of the content is local, localized, local. So they are people, actors, actresses you might see at a shopping center roadshow. You can read about, might even be living in your condo or your estate. So there is a relatability that you just don't get from watching Squid Game on Netflix, even though you may revere the talent there. That's one. Two, I think for things like news, current affairs, again, there is a certain stickiness. I know quite a few people who are unrelated to each other except for the fact that I know all of them, who have told me, oh, what do I watch on TV? I watch CNA for the news, and I watch such and such a local TV channel for the local entertainment, and then I watch Netflix and Disney Plus. So that's kind of their selection. And I think that the thing about the streaming platforms, yes, there's a lot of choice, but also when there is so much choice, people actually do appreciate something curated. I was talking actually to a young couple in their 20s. I think they're probably 27, 28, that kind of age. And we were talking about things like Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, you know? And they said they really appreciate the fact that on those channels, they know that the content is curated for the kids. So, whereas if you let the child watch anything on a general streaming platform, the sky's the limit. So, I think these are some of the things that keep the local or more specialized channels and platforms relevant for people. And to what Jeremiah said about people, doing video calls during a performance, I gave a guest talk once for general paper at one of our junior colleges. And the teacher in charge who was walking me to the lecture theatre, she forewarned me. She said, Mr. Tan, I have to forewarn you, the students will probably not be looking at you as you talk. They will all be on their screens, but they are not playing. They will actually be Googling and researching so that they can challenge you afterwards when they ask questions. And truth be told, my talk was about 35, 40 minutes. The Q&A went for 2 hours. And it's substantive. They were not silly questions. They were really good, well thought through questions. It was good that I had been prepped, because otherwise my feelings would have been hurt. Here I am talking to 300 students and very few of them were looking at me. This was 2019, I think, just a few months before the pandemic started.
Yeah, I suppose that those are the advantages of having instant access to information. I guess it's a lot easier to get the research done and the backgrounding. But you mentioned Squid Games, and if you look at the Korean series, they seem to be doing very well internationally, right? Squid Games and Parasite was the other one as well that won an award. Can our local content be elevated to a level where it becomes more internationally known?
I think so. I think that Singapore has to work on storytelling. I think we have so much subject matter that we can turn into stories, but we need to work on the storytelling. I personally think that Korea is unique. The language is idiosyncratic, right? Not that many people outside the Korean community actually understand it, and yet you look at how their content has traveled. So I think that one of the things the Koreans have done very well is they haven't tried to make content that is all things to all people. They crafted their stories. Many of the K-dramas and all of that, they couldn't be made anywhere else because they're so rooted in Korean culture. But the storytelling is so compelling that even if you don't speak the language, America is notorious for being reluctant to accept foreign language content and read subtitles. This is well known. And yet, Korean content has made it there as well. So I think the storytelling and not trying to please everybody and be all things to all people, tell our own stories, tell it our way, but of course make sure also that the production values are up to scratch so that it looks good enough to be paid for.
Interesting point that, because I think while we have a lot of interest, we have great stories to tell. Why is it we are lacking in this storytelling ability? Maybe Jeremiah and Lavania as well, if you've got thoughts on that, would be great.
I don't
What
want
do
to
you
go
think?
to the other extent of the usual blame game of censorship and whatever it is. I think we have been trained from young to be very circumspect about what we say and what we want to do, and we can't really free our minds because we are always scared of what if I say this, and what if the government don't like it, or what if I do that, or my grant will be taken away from me, and things like that. It's very ingrained in us. You know, but then again, I want to say, let's not blame it on censorship. You know, at the end of the day, I always believe as artists or art makers, I always call art makers rather than artists, we must have what we want to say, and we mustn't be afraid of saying it. So long as it's the truth, so long as it's something that you are very uh, uh, sure of saying, it's your point of view, even though majority would not accept it, I think there is a good story to be said, because it will be of interest to somebody somewhere. You know, because if we want to be very commercial, meaning that we want to be everything to everybody, like what Kenneth say, then you'll be nobody to anybody, because it's too wishy-washy, so to speak, because you're trying to cut a cloth to suit everybody, in that sense. You know, like designing a clothes, right? You put in a button, you put in a zip, you put in a sequin, because you want to please everybody. But there's nothing unique about that design that you have, that you truly want to stay, you know, yourself as it is. So I think that is one quality that we're lacking at the moment, and there's one quality that we can definitely work on as Singapore storytelling culture.
So the uniquely Singapore thing needs to be drawn into this discussion then, right?
Yeah.
We need to have more unique stories.
Yeah.
Lavania, do you see this as an issue for you? I mean, do you feel that you're losing out on the opportunity to learn and understand more of Singapore because we don't have enough unique experiences that are being shared?
So that's why there are platforms like TikTok and Instagram stories, right? Like where people can go there and say their own stories. There are also some like I've seen short movies being published on YouTube, for example. I mean, there is no censorship there, so people can consume such media on those platforms. But yeah, I feel like there needs to be more exposure to our local artists. For example, Vasantham, I think they produce brilliant dramas, and when I compare Vasantham to another Indian channel, like say like Sony TV or Zee TV, I'll still very much choose Vasantham because the content and their screenplays, their series are all fantastic.
Okay. I'm just also wondering, we've got things like the metaverse coming up now, and that's another totally different space in which to play and do a whole lot of things. I mean, somebody had a metaverse wedding recently, right? Where does that fit in? I mean, that's just another level of confusion that's being added to things that you can watch and do. Do you think there are just way too many things going on and it's going to become even more difficult to try and anchor yourself anywhere?
Is there a planet I can run to where there are no such things?
There might be an island somewhere without any network and connectivity. You'll be safe there, I guess. But apart from that, I think, if you're here, you've got to accept that these things are going on. How do we have a natural process of filtering? Because now when I talk to everybody, there's a lot of binge watching going on. And surely that's got to do something to how people are going to be operating in the normal course of the day. If you're binge watching to 3, 4 in the morning, and then you're expected to be at work, how much of your head is at work? Things so that our students studying, I mean, I'm sure parents will have some control. But Kenneth, what do you reckon? Do you think there's just too many things going on, too many platforms?
There are a lot, but I'm quite optimistic. I'll use an analogy. I love books. I'm never going to forsake hard copy books, even though I read a lot online as well. And there's never enough time to read all the books. There are books I have bought on my travels 10 years ago that I haven't even unwrapped, because it's just the way it is. So back when literary media was the main way of getting information and getting enriched, we already had this problem of too much. And now it's just in different forms, different technology. I think ultimately most people find their own equilibrium. If you binge watch and then after a while you're falling asleep at your desk, you will self calibrate. And if young parents, for example, like Lavania, they say, look, no, this is too much of all this and it's no good. I'm going to lay down my own rules of consumption. That's what people will do. So I'm quite optimistic. I do think, on balance, it's a good thing that there's a proliferation of choice because people do have a lot more at their disposal. And it's a little bit like, how you can become a slave to your mobile phone, right? To text messages. Or when the BlackBerry first came out, I couldn't stop looking at it because it actually pushed the email to me until I had an aha moment. I said, this is a machine. Do not need to let it control my life. And then it'll be a wonderful thing because when I choose to look at it, it helps me be more efficient. And I think that people find their own equilibrium. And if some people willingly choose to let themselves be overwhelmed, we shouldn't pass judgment on them as well because that may be what they want.
Jeremiah, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. Just like the metaverse, right? It is a fantasy island that you want to go to escape from the reality of and stress of real life, right? And if people want to go there once in a while or want to stay there forever, it's their choice. And they make the choice, and they will have to live with that in that sense. So there's, as what Kenneth said, there's nothing for us to pass judgment on. I think everyone will have to decide for themselves what they want to do. I remember I just had a short vacation and I was debating whether to bring a book and my iPad. In the end, I brought my book because I felt that I have enough of screen time during work, during doing research, doing a lot of things, and to save paper. Right nowadays, everything is on my iPad. And if I were to bring my iPad along, it will be bringing work along as well. So I decided I'll just bring my book. If anybody needs to reach me, they have my iPhone, right? But at the same time, I switched off my iPhone I will not reply to anybody on my iPhone for the weekend because I decided to just take a break. It's all personal decisions. We are in control. We don't have to let media or your smartphone control your life, Yeah.
Lavinia?
I can relate to Kenneth, man. I have so many books untouched. I'm so guilty of that. And there's also audiobooks available. So I always put an audiobook when I'm driving. But it's just that touch of paper, I really miss that. And I literally don't have the time because with 2 kids, with 2 businesses, and with a husband also, I literally don't
He
have
came in
time
last in
to
that
read
list.
the book. So with this metaverse whole world, I think it's just when it comes, we will look at it when it comes. I'm not going to worry too much about it. So
Yeah, ultimately, though, it's going to be their environment and they will have to learn to live with it, right? You can't be calling all the shots all the time. Okay, last sort of thing before we wind up today's session. What do you guys enjoy watching now, and what would you like to watch in the future? Let's start with you, Jeremiah.
Okay, it really depends. I go to YouTube a lot for research for my work. Right now, I'm researching BTS.
Okay.
Getting to know them, getting to know the songs because of my concert end of the year for Child Aid. During the workshop, a lot of the young children chose Blackpink and BTS. They are very influenced by them. So in order for me to get into their world, I need to understand their world. So yeah, I'm trying to differentiate the 7 members of BTS at the moment, but I couldn't. Or it doesn't matter. But for a mindless relaxation, I tend to Netflix or Disney for the various programs. I like what Kenneth say. I tend to go back to old programmings. Like the Nanny
Okay.
Fry. I didn't get to see the entire episodes, Friends, and all that. So I binge watch, 20 seasons in one go or something like that, and relive my childhood. Of course, I'm very much into K-drama as well. Yeah, so there's lots of things there, but it's really how you want to control yourself. How do you want to enjoy watching it? And the choice of switching it off anytime you feel bored or switching off anytime you're tired, and not to overindulge in it such that it overtakes your life. Yeah, that's what I've been doing with media.
Okay, great. Kenneth, how about yourself?
Well, actually, this past few months, I've been a fan of the Swedish pop group ABBA forever, and you may know that last year they regrouped, and in June I flew to London and attended the concert that they had done with Industrial Light and Magic. So it's not really them on stage, but it was them filmed in motion capture, and as a result, I too, like Jeremiah, have been on YouTube a lot researching all things ABBA, historical footage and some of the origins and meaning of the lyrics of some of the lesser known songs and so on. Beyond that, the type of movies that I enjoy most are actually, I think, just human interest stories. I like watching films. I don't mind if a movie is just all dialogue, if it's interesting. If it's something that's going on, some tension in the family, or it's 5 or 6 main characters and what happens to them. That movie Crash that won several Academy Awards, just intersecting stories of people seemingly unrelated. I like that kind of film, so I watch a lot of that. Movies are my work as well, so the line between work and play is very, very blur. But I also watch a lot of foreign language films to curate programs, for our film festivals. But I think that I get asked sometimes, do you draw the line between art and entertainment in movies? And I think there is no line. I like quoting the example of Steven Spielberg's E.T. the Extraterrestrial. Right? Beautiful film, huge success commercially. Is that art? To me, it is. A beautiful film about loneliness, about innocence, friendship between a boy and a creature and a living thing from somewhere else. So that's a flavor of what I watch.
Okay, so almost anything then.
Yes, almost anything.
Lavinia, how about yourself?
Yeah, mostly YouTube. Apart from the annoying ads that YouTube have come up with, I watch a lot of YouTube for my to choreograph my dance routines, and Netflix because sometimes I like watching beautiful homes all over the country, and there was this one series called Selling Sunset, and anything that's got to do with home and architecture. I love watching that. So it's quite limited, I would say. Of course, no time again.
Okay, great. Jeremiah, Kenneth, and Lavinia, thank you for joining the session, for your views. I think, we will always want to be entertained by something. And if it's means going someplace to be entertained or having it at the convenience of your iPad or your iPhone even, then that's fine too. I think the whole process of being entertained constantly can be a bit challenging because you might start to lose track of reality. But as all of you have pointed out, it's a matter of discipline as well, right? How much discipline you have to control yourself, and those who are in the process of growing up to appreciate that there are other things in life than just what's on the screen. But I think certainly there's no shortage of things to watch, and it certainly has resulted in the proliferation of fantastic opportunities for people to put their stories forth. And some fantastic documentaries have also emerged on Netflix and places like that where you would not normally get a chance to see them. So I think it's great that we have so many things that we can take in and absorb and learn and continue to evolve. Thanks again for joining the session.